Before the world wakes, before birds test their voices, before the sky even remembers that it will become morning, there is already movement within the stone walls of the monastery. Not hurried, not loud, just a quiet stirring like breath returning to a sleeping body. You are here now, walking softly, listening. The monastery has stood for generations. Its stones are worn smooth by time, prayer, and countless passing feet. If you place your hand against the wall, it feels cool, steady, unchanging. This place was built to slow the world down. And tonight, or this morning, it will slow you down too. Long before sunrise, a bell sounds, not sharply, not urgently. It is a low, patient sound, a reminder rather than a command. The monks rise from their narrow wooden beds. No words are spoken. There is no need. Each monk knows this moment by heart. Their bodies wake before their minds fully do. Hands find familiar folds of woolen robes. Bare feet touch cold stone floors that have never known warmth. The chill is expected, accepted, almost comforting. There is something grounding about cold stone at this hour, something that pulls attention out of wandering thoughts and back into the body. Slow footsteps echo faintly in the corridor, not all at once. One, then another, then another. The monastery does not wake suddenly. It awakens like a candle flame, gradually, quietly, without effort. They walk through narrow passageways lit by small, flickering candles. The air smells of wax, old wood, and stone dampened by centuries of night air. No one speaks. Speech is unnecessary here. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is structure. Each monk carries the same unspoken understanding. This hour belongs to God and to stillness. They enter the chapel. It is dark but not empty. Shadows rest in every corner. The high ceiling disappears into darkness above. Candles are lit one by one. Their light does not chase away the dark, it simply lives beside it. The monks take their places. Wooden benches creak softly under their weight. Robes settle, breath slow. And then voices rise, the chanting begins low, measured, unrushed. Each syllable is given space to exist. The sound does not echo wildly, it rests as if the stone itself is listening. Psalms that have been sung here for generations fill the chapel again. The words are old, older than any monk present, older than memory. Time feels different now. Minutes do not matter. Hours loosen their grip. There is only voice, breath, and candlelight. Some monks sway almost imperceptibly as they chant, not from fatigue but from rhythm. When the chanting pauses, the silence that follows feels deep, layered, alive. Eventually the prayers end. Heads bow, hands fold. No signal is needed. They rise and leave the chapel as quietly as they entered. Outside, the night still holds firm. The sky has not yet lightened. The world beyond the monastery walls remains asleep, unaware. Some monks return briefly to their beds. Others remain awake, sitting in small alcoves or cells. A single candle illuminates a page. Books are precious here, each one copied by hand, each letter shaped with patience. A monk traces lines of Latin text with tired but careful eyes. The words are familiar, memorized long ago, yet still treated with reverence. There is no rush to finish a page. There is no reward for speed. The act itself is enough. Eventually, the bell rings again. This time, the sound feels gentler, as though it knows the sky is beginning to change. Dawn approaches slowly in the medieval world. There are no clocks here, no glowing screens. Morning arrives by feeling, by light shifting, by birds beginning to stir. The monks gather once more, this time in a smaller chapel or prayer room. Lauds, the prayer of early morning, begins. Voices are softer now. Sleep still clings gently to them. As the final words fade, the monks bow their heads. A new day has begun. Breakfast is simple. It must be. Food here is not meant to excite or distract. It is meant to sustain. Rough bread is broken, perhaps a small portion of cheese, sometimes fruit if the season allows, water or weak watered wine. They eat together, but not together in the way you might expect. There is no conversation, no laughter, no exchange of glances. Instead, one monk stands and reads aloud. The voice is calm, even, unemotional. Scripture or the writings of the church fathers fill the room as bowls are quietly emptied. The rhythm of listening and eating blends into one slow, steady experience. When the meal ends, the monks rise. No one lingers, no one hurries. The day unfolds naturally from here. After breakfast comes work, not as punishment, not as burden. Work is prayer, just in a different shape. Some monks walk into the gardens. The soil is cool and dark beneath their fingers. Herbs are trimmed, vegetables tended. The garden is quiet but alive. Bees hum softly. Birds hop between stones. Other monks make their way to the scriptorium. This room smells of ink, parchment, and dust warmed by candlelight. Long tables sit beneath narrow windows. A monk dips his quill into ink, shakes off the excess. Then begins. Letter by letter, line by line, a book slowly comes into being. Mistakes are costly. Parchment is expensive, so every movement is deliberate. Breathing slows. The mind narrows to the shape of each letter. There is peace in this focus. Elsewhere in the monastery, other tasks continue. Clothing is mended. Candles are made. Tools are repaired. Each monk has his assigned role, and once assigned, it rarely changes. There is comfort in knowing what is expected, in repeating the same motions day after day. No decisions to weigh, no choices to regret, just the next small task and the one after that. As the sun climbs higher, light filters through stone-framed windows. Dust motes drift lazily in the air. Eventually, the bell rings again. Midday. Work stops, not abruptly but willingly. Hands are washed, tools are set aside. The monks gather for prayer once more. The rhythm of standing, sitting, chanting, bowing is now deeply familiar. It feels less like instruction and more like breathing. The midday meal is modest but nourishing. Vegetables from the garden, bread, occasionally fish. Meat is rare, often forbidden. Again, silence fills the room, broken only by the voice of the reader. The words drift gently through the space, barely demanding attention. It is acceptable if the mind wanders slightly here. The structure will always bring it back. When the meal ends, there is a short period of rest. Some monks recline on simple benches. Others walk slowly through the cloister. The cloister is a square courtyard open to the sky. Stone columns line the walkway. Grass grows quietly in the center. Footsteps echo softly as monks circle the space, one slow lap, then another. The world feels very far away. The afternoon brings more work, the same tasks, the same movements, the same silence. There is no boredom here, only repetition. And repetition in this place is safety. Outside the monastery walls, life is uncertain. Famine, war, disease all loom beyond the horizon. Inside, the bell always rings. Meals always come. Prayers always return. The walls do more than protect bodies. They protect time. As the sun begins to lower, the light changes again. Shadows stretch across the stone floors. Candles are lit once more. The monks gather for evening prayer. Voices rise, tired now but steady. The day has been long, yet never rushed. As the final chant fades, a quiet sense of completion settles over the room. Nothing urgent remains. Supper is light, sometimes only bread and water, sometimes soup, still no conversation. The monks eat slowly, aware that the day is nearing its close. Afterward, there is a brief time for reflection, for private prayer, for silence. Then the final bell of the day, Compline. The last prayer before sleep. Candles glow warmly in the chapel. The chanting is softer now, slower. Forgiveness is asked. Gratitude is given. One by one, the candles are extinguished. Darkness returns, not suddenly but gently. The monks bow their heads and depart. In their cells, they lie down on simple beds. Wooden frames, thin mattresses, the stone walls hold the cool of night. There is no fear here, no anxiety about tomorrow. Tomorrow will look very much like today, and that sameness is peace. Breathing slows, thoughts fade. Outside, the monastery sleeps, waiting patiently for the bell to ring again. As the monastery settles into the deeper hours of night, something subtle happens within its walls. Not a silence that feels empty or abandoned, but a silence that feels full, layered, and patiently held in place by centuries of repetition and belief. This silence is not accidental. It is chosen, protected, and carefully maintained. For a medieval monk, silence is not merely the absence of speech. It is a discipline, a shelter, and in many ways a teacher. Within these walls, silence shapes thought the way water shapes stone, slowly, steadily, and without force. When morning returns, it does not arrive as a dramatic moment. There is no sudden brightness, no clear dividing line between night and day. Instead, light seeps gradually into the monastery, filtering through narrow windows and settling softly along the stone floors, as if unsure whether it is truly welcome yet. The monks rise again when the bell calls them, their bodies responding before their thoughts fully catch up, moving through the familiar motions of dressing, washing, and walking the corridors with a calm certainty born from years of repetition. This repetition is not monotony here. It is stability. Each movement has been done thousands of times before, by these same hands and by countless hands long gone, and that knowledge brings a strange comfort, a sense of being carried forward by something much larger than oneself. As prayers begin once more, the monks' voices are slower today, fuller somehow, shaped by the quiet rest of the night and the cool air still lingering within the chapel. The chanting does not seek to impress or perform. It does not rise and fall dramatically. Instead, it moves like a steady river, predictable, calm, and strong enough to carry wandering thoughts back to the present moment. Time loosens its grip again. Outside the monastery walls, farmers will soon wake, animals will stir, and the world will begin its noisy negotiations with survival. Inside, the rhythm remains unchanged. After prayers, the monks disperse to their daily tasks, and with the passing of hours, the monastery reveals itself not as a single unified space, but as a collection of quiet, purposeful worlds, each with its own gentle atmosphere. In the gardens, the earth is dark and damp, carrying the memory of last night's cold. Hands sink into soil, feeling for roots and stones, guided by touch more than sight. There is a quiet satisfaction in this work, the knowledge that food will come from this earth, that effort today will nourish bodies weeks from now. Nearby, a monk pauses to listen to the wind moving through tall grasses, not because he has time to spare, but because attentiveness itself is part of the work. In the scriptorium, the world feels smaller and more focused. Here, attention narrows until only the page exists. A monk leans forward, shoulders slightly hunched, breath shallow but steady, as the quill glides slowly across the parchment, leaving behind dark, deliberate lines of ink that must be perfect, not for beauty alone, but for clarity, accuracy, and respect for the words being preserved. Every letter matters. Mistakes are scraped away carefully, leaving faint scars on the page that tell quiet stories of human imperfection within divine pursuit. The room is filled with soft, nearly imperceptible sounds. The scratch of quills, the shifting of robes, the gentle sigh of someone stretching stiff fingers. No one speaks. Speech would feel out of place here, like a sudden interruption in a dream. Elsewhere, in dimly lit workshops, monks repair tools worn smooth by years of use, or dip candle wicks into warm wax again and again, patiently building layers until each candle is sturdy enough to burn through long nights of prayer. These tasks are humble and repetitive, yet deeply necessary. Without candles, there is no light for reading. Without tools, there is no food. Without quiet labor, the monastery cannot continue. Nothing here exists without purpose, and nothing is done for personal recognition. As midday approaches, hunger arrives gently without urgency. The bell rings, and once again the monks respond without hesitation, setting aside their work not with reluctance, but with acceptance. Meals here are not a break from spiritual life. They are part of it. The food is simple, intentionally so, because indulgence is believed to dull the senses and distract the heart. As they eat, listening to the steady voice of the reader, the monks are reminded that nourishment is not only physical, but mental and spiritual as well. The words spoken during meals are meant to settle quietly into the mind, absorbed gradually rather than analyzed or debated. No one is asked to understand everything at once. Understanding, like faith, is allowed to grow slowly. After the meal, the short period of rest feels especially precious. Some monks sit beneath the cloister arches, eyes half closed, feeling the air move gently across their faces. Others walk the familiar square path, counting footsteps unconsciously, letting the mind empty itself of lingering thoughts. This is not laziness. Rest is seen as necessary balance, a way to care for the body so that the spirit may continue its work without resentment or fatigue. Even here, moderation is key. Rest is taken, but never indulged in excessively. The afternoon passes in much the same way as the morning, and that sameness is embraced rather than resisted. The medieval monk does not seek novelty. Novelty belongs to the outside world, with its constant changes and uncertainties. Inside the monastery, predictability is protection. When one knows what each hour will bring, fear loses its power. There is no anxiety about the future here, only attention to the present moment and trust that tomorrow will arrive when it is meant to. As evening draws near, the monastery grows quieter still, not because fewer monks are present, but because the day's energy naturally softens, like a fire settling into glowing embers. Voices during prayer are lower now, shaped by tired lungs and long hours of chanting. The melodies stretch gently, unhurried, allowing each note to linger in the air before giving way to the next. Candlelight flickers against stone walls, casting moving shadows that seem almost alive, reminding anyone who watches long enough that nothing is ever truly still. Supper is brief and light. The body does not need much now. The monks eat slowly, aware that the night will soon claim the monastery again, wrapping it in darkness and quiet. Afterward, there is time for reflection, a rare opportunity for the monks to sit alone with their thoughts, to examine their actions from the day, to consider where they succeeded in humility and where pride may have crept in unnoticed. This inward attention is gentle, not harsh. Self-examination here is meant to guide, not punish. When the final bell rings for Compline, the monks gather one last time, their movements almost instinctive now, bodies responding automatically to the sound that has structured their entire adult lives. The final prayers are spoken slowly, carefully, with a softness that acknowledges the day's end. There is comfort in knowing that nothing more is required tonight. Forgiveness is sought for small failings. Gratitude is offered for the gift of another day lived simply and with intention. One by one, the candles are extinguished and darkness returns to the chapel, settling into corners and along the floor without resistance. As the monks return to their cells, the monastery seems to exhale. Doors close quietly, footsteps fade. The stone walls hold the cool night air, unchanged and patient. In their beds, the monks lie still, hands folded or resting at their sides, breath slowing naturally as the mind releases its grip on the day. Tomorrow will follow the same pattern. The bell will ring again. And in that certainty, sleep comes easily. As days pass within the monastery, they do not stack themselves neatly in the mind the way they might elsewhere, each one distinct and labeled, but instead begin to blend together into a single, continuous experience, like drops of water merging into a calm, steady stream that moves forward without pause or resistance. For a medieval monk, time is not something to be measured closely or chased after. It is something to be entered, inhabited, and gently surrendered to. Weeks turn into months almost without notice, and months soften into seasons, marked less by dates than by subtle changes in light, temperature, and the quiet transformation of the world beyond the monastery walls. In spring, the air inside the cloister carries a faint sweetness, and the garden begins to show signs of life once more, with small green shoots pushing carefully through the soil, reminding the monks that renewal is happening everywhere, even when it is nearly invisible at first. Work in the garden becomes slower and more deliberate, as hands learn again how to nurture rather than simply maintain, how to guide growth without forcing it, trusting that life knows its own rhythm far better than any human ever could. There is a particular satisfaction in these spring tasks, not because they are easier, but because they carry quiet hope within them, the promise that effort given patiently will eventually return in the form of nourishment and continuity. Inside the scriptorium, daylight lingers longer now, allowing work to stretch gently into the afternoon without reliance on candlelight, and the monks welcome this natural illumination, even as they remain careful never to rush their copying, knowing that clarity and devotion matter far more than speed. Summer brings warmth into the stone halls, though the thick walls keep the heat from becoming overwhelming, creating a steady, cool interior that feels sheltered from the intensity of the outside world. The rhythm of prayer remains unchanged, but the body feels the season in subtle ways, the weight of robes, the slower pace of movement, the need for water after long hours of labor. Even so, complaints are rare. Discomfort is acknowledged quietly, accepted as part of existence rather than resisted or dramatized, and this acceptance itself becomes a form of discipline, teaching the monks to remain steady regardless of external conditions. In the fields beyond the monastery, crops grow tall and full, and during harvest time, monks may work alongside lay brothers or hired laborers, their silence standing out against the occasional sounds of tools and voices, a gentle reminder that their lives move according to a different internal rhythm. Autumn arrives gradually, and with it comes a deepening sense of reflection. Leaves change color beyond the cloister walls, and the air grows crisp in the early mornings, carrying the scent of earth preparing itself for rest. Work turns inward again. The harvest is stored. Manuscripts are finished or carefully wrapped for protection. Tools are cleaned and repaired in preparation for winter. There is a quiet satisfaction in this preparation, in knowing that care taken now will sustain the community through the colder months ahead, when movement slows and the outside world feels more distant than ever. The monks do not fear winter. They respect it. When winter finally settles over the monastery, silence deepens even further, as snow dampens sound and long nights stretch gently across the hours, inviting longer periods of prayer, reflection, and rest. Candles become precious again, their warm glow filling chapels and corridors with soft light that feels almost alive against the surrounding darkness. The cold stone floors remind the monks of their physical presence each time bare feet touch the ground, grounding them firmly in the present moment, no matter how far their thoughts might drift during prayer. Winter is not seen as a hardship here. It is seen as a teacher. It teaches endurance, patience, and trust in routine, when comfort is scarce and days feel longer than usual. Throughout all seasons, the vows the monks have taken remain quietly central to every moment of their lives, even when they are not spoken aloud or consciously recalled. The vow of poverty shapes every object within the monastery, from the simplicity of clothing to the shared ownership of tools and books, ensuring that no monk sees anything as truly his own. This absence of personal possession is not meant to diminish the individual, but to free him from constant comparison and desire, allowing attention to rest instead on shared purpose and collective responsibility. The vow of chastity, too, is lived quietly rather than dramatically, expressed not through repression, but through redirection, as emotional energy is guided toward prayer, service, and the cultivation of inner stillness. And the vow of obedience, perhaps the most challenging of all, teaches the monk to release the need for control, trusting instead in the structure of the community and the guidance of the abbot, even when personal preference might suggest another path. The abbot himself moves through the monastery with a presence that is felt more than announced. He is neither distant nor authoritarian, but quietly observant, attentive to the needs and struggles of the monks under his care. His authority is rooted not in power but in responsibility. He listens carefully when approached, speaks sparingly, and carries the weight of the community's spiritual health with humility rather than pride. For many monks, the abbot becomes a living example of what years of discipline and devotion can shape a person into steady, compassionate, and deeply grounded. As years pass, new monks arrive, their faces younger, their movements less assured, their silence more tentative. They are easy to recognize. They hesitate slightly before prayers, glance around during meals, and struggle at first with the physical demands of long hours of standing and kneeling. Older monks notice these things without comment. Guidance is offered gently, often wordlessly, through example rather than instruction. A gesture, a slowed pace, a quiet presence beside them during prayer. Over time, the new monks settle, their bodies adapt, their minds quiet. And eventually, they too become part of the steady rhythm that defines monastery life. Aging within the monastery is different from aging in the outside world. There is no anxiety here about productivity or relevance. Older monks are not pushed aside or hurried. Instead, their experience is valued quietly, their slower pace accepted as natural rather than inconvenient. They may be given lighter tasks, reading, prayer, instruction of novices, but their role remains essential as living reminders of the long view of monastic life, of faith sustained not by intensity but by persistence. When illness comes, it is met with care rather than fear. Brothers tend to one another without fuss, offering water, warmth, and presence. Death, when it arrives, is treated not as a rupture but as a transition. Prayers are spoken, candles are lit. The rhythm continues. What might seem repetitive or restrictive to an outsider feels deeply liberating from within. Freed from constant decision-making, from competition, from the pressure to define oneself through achievement, the monk's inner world gradually opens and expands. Thoughts slow, emotions soften. The mind becomes less reactive, less restless. Silence begins to feel not like emptiness, but like spaciousness. And in that space, something subtle begins to grow, an awareness that does not demand words or explanation, only attention and patience. The monastery itself feels alive in this way, shaped not only by stone and timber, but by the accumulated presence of all who have lived and prayed within it. Walls seem to remember chants long faded. Corridors hold echoes of footsteps that no longer walk them. Even the air carries a sense of continuity, as though the past and present exist side by side, inseparable. Living here is not about escaping the world, but about engaging with it differently, more slowly, more intentionally, and with fewer distractions pulling the mind in endless directions. At night, when the monastery rests beneath the stars, there is a profound sense of enclosure, not as confinement but as shelter. The world beyond the walls feels distant, almost unreal, while the familiar sounds of breathing, shifting robes, and occasional wind against stone remind the monks that they are held within something stable and enduring. Sleep comes naturally, not because exhaustion overwhelms the body, but because the mind has been allowed to settle gradually throughout the day, without sudden shocks or overstimulation. Dreams, when they come, are gentle and fleeting, and when morning returns, it is welcomed without resistance. In this way, life in the monastery unfolds not as a series of dramatic moments, but as a long, steady practice of presence, humility, and acceptance. Nothing extraordinary happens here, and yet everything happens here. Each breath, each prayer, each simple task contributes to a life shaped quietly, patiently, and with great care. The bell will ring again. It always does. And when it does, the monks will rise just as they have for generations, ready to enter once more into the calm, enduring rhythm that defines their days. There is a common belief, held quietly by those who have never lived behind monastery walls, that the life of a medieval monk is free from struggle, untouched by doubt, and protected from the restless movements of the human heart. But the silence of the monastery does not erase the inner world. It reveals it. When the noise of the outside world falls away, when distraction is carefully limited and days follow a predictable, gentle rhythm, The mind begins to speak more clearly and not always kindly. Thoughts that once hid beneath busyness now have space to rise. Memories return, questions surface, doubts stretch awake. And it is here in this quiet openness that much of a monk's true work takes place. In the earliest years of monastic life, silence can feel almost overwhelming. A new monk may discover that his thoughts feel louder than ever before, filling the empty spaces left behind by conversation and worldly concerns. In prayer, his mind wanders. During work, old regrets resurface. At night, memories arrive uninvited. This is not seen as failure. It is understood as part of the path. The monastery does not promise immediate peace. It offers the conditions in which peace can slowly grow. Temptation, too, exists here, though it takes quieter forms. There are temptations of comfort, when the body aches and longs for warmth or rest beyond what is allowed. There are temptations of pride, when a monk notices his own discipline, his own endurance, and feels subtly superior to others. There are temptations of distraction, when the mind drifts endlessly during prayer, replaying conversations long past or imagining a life that might have been lived differently. These temptations are rarely dramatic. They arrive softly, disguised as reasonable thoughts. And so the monk learns not to fight them aggressively, but to notice them gently, acknowledging their presence without allowing them to take root. One of the greatest teachers within the monastery is boredom. In the outside world, boredom is often treated as something to be avoided at all costs, filled immediately with noise, movement, or entertainment. Here, boredom is allowed. It is given space. A monk may find himself copying text for hours, his hands moving automatically, his mind restless and searching for novelty. At first, this restlessness feels unbearable, but slowly something shifts. When boredom is no longer resisted, it begins to soften. The mind, finding no escape, settles into the present moment. And within that settling, a deeper attention begins to emerge, one that does not depend on excitement but on quiet endurance. Doubt, too, is an unspoken companion for many monks. Despite a life devoted to faith, questions arise. Why this path? Why this silence? Why these rituals repeated day after day? The monastery does not demand that these questions be eliminated. Instead, it invites the monk to live alongside them, trusting that certainty is not required for devotion. Faith here is not about constant confidence. It is about continued presence, showing up for prayer even when the heart feels dry, continuing the work even when meaning feels distant. This steady commitment offered without emotional reward is considered one of the deepest forms of devotion. At times, the weight of routine presses heavily. Days blur together. Seasons pass with little outward change. A monk may feel invisible, his efforts unnoticed, his sacrifices unacknowledged. In these moments, the temptation to measure life by visible results grows strong. But the monastery gently resists this way of thinking. Here, success is not measured by achievement but by faithfulness. Did you show up? Did you remain attentive? Did you return to the rhythm even when you felt nothing? These are the questions that matter. Silence itself becomes a companion over the years, changing in character as the monk changes. At first, silence may feel empty, even threatening, a vast space with no clear edges. Later, it becomes familiar, like a room one has lived in for a long time. Eventually, for some, silence begins to feel full, rich with subtle sensations, gentle awareness, and a deep sense of presence that does not require words. This is not something that can be forced. It arrives gradually, unexpectedly, after long seasons of simply staying. The practice of prayer evolves as well. In the beginning, prayer may feel like effort, concentration, discipline, repeated words spoken even when the heart feels distant. Over time, prayer becomes less about saying the right things and more about listening. Moments arise when words fall away entirely, leaving only awareness, breathing, stillness, being. These moments are brief and fragile. They cannot be held onto, but they leave behind a quiet trace, a sense that something deeper is unfolding beneath the surface of daily life. Community life adds another layer to this inner work. Living in close proximity with the same group of people year after year reveals habits and personalities with great clarity. Small irritations arise. Differences in temperament become obvious. There are monks who walk too slowly, chant too loudly, or seem endlessly distracted. There are moments of impatience, frustration, even quiet resentment. The monastery does not encourage avoidance of these feelings. Instead, it treats them as opportunities for humility. The monk learns to see others not as obstacles to peace, but as mirrors reflecting his own unfinished work. Forgiveness becomes a daily practice, often silent, often internal, but deeply necessary. Conflict, when it arises, is handled quietly. There are no raised voices, no public arguments. Disagreements are brought to the abbot, spoken calmly, and resolved with an emphasis on unity rather than victory. The goal is not to be right. The goal is to remain together. This emphasis on harmony does not erase tension entirely, but it teaches monks how to hold tension without allowing it to fracture the community. Over the years, a monk begins to notice subtle changes within himself. Reactions soften, patience increases, the urge to control outcomes weakens. There is more space between thought and response. These changes are rarely dramatic. They are often only visible in hindsight, noticed one day in the absence of a familiar reaction that no longer arises. What once triggered irritation now passes quietly. What once caused anxiety now feels manageable. The transformation is gradual, almost imperceptible, like stone being shaped by water over centuries. Even suffering, when it comes, is met differently here. Loss is inevitable. Monks watch brothers age, weaken, and eventually die. Grief is present, but it is shared. Prayers are said. Work continues. The rhythm holds everyone, even in sorrow. This does not diminish grief. It supports it. Suffering is not isolated here. It is carried collectively, woven into the ongoing life of the monastery. There are moments, rare and quiet, when a monk may experience a deep sense of alignment, a feeling that nothing is missing, that this life, in all its simplicity and repetition, is exactly where he is meant to be. These moments do not last. They are not clung to. But they offer reassurance during more difficult seasons, reminders that meaning here does not depend on constant emotional fulfillment. At night, when the monastery rests, these inner movements continue to settle. The mind, shaped by a day of silence and routine, releases its grip more easily. Sleep comes gently, and even in rest the rhythm remains, steady and patient, waiting to welcome the monk again at dawn. In this way, the monastery becomes not a place of escape, but a place of encounter with oneself, with others, with time, and with the quiet mystery that unfolds when life is lived slowly, attentively, and with care. Nothing is resolved all at once. Nothing is completed quickly. And yet everything necessary is given space to unfold. The bell will ring again. And when it does, the monk will rise, not because he feels perfectly ready, but because rising itself is part of the practice. As the years continue to pass within the monastery, they do not announce themselves loudly or demand recognition, but instead settle quietly into the body and the bones, leaving their marks not in dramatic milestones, but in subtle changes that are felt more than seen. Hair thins, steps slow, breath becomes more deliberate, and yet the rhythm remains. For an aging monk, time no longer feels like something unfolding ahead, but something gently gathering behind him, a long trail of days shaped by prayer, work, silence, and shared life. The bell still rings, and he still rises. Old age within the monastery is not treated as a decline to be hidden or hurried past, but as a natural and honored stage of the same path that began decades earlier. There is no retirement here, no sudden separation from purpose. Instead, tasks change slowly, almost imperceptibly, as strength fades and endurance wanes. An older monk may no longer work the fields or stand for long hours in the cold chapel, but he remains present, reading, praying, advising, and simply being among the brothers as a living testament to what a life of constancy looks like when carried to its natural conclusion. Younger monks notice these elders quietly. They watch how an older brother rises carefully from his bench, how he pauses before speaking, how his prayers seem to settle more deeply into silence than words. There is no formal instruction in these observations, no lessons announced, but much is learned simply by sharing space. The older monk teaches without intending to teach, shaping the community not through authority but through presence. Memory changes with age. The monk may forget small details, names, dates, even passages once memorized with ease, but other memories grow clearer and more vivid. Moments from long ago return unexpectedly. The first night inside the monastery walls, the weight of robes newly worn, the sound of chanting that once felt unfamiliar and strange. These memories are not clung to. They rise and pass like breath. The monk does not dwell on who he was before the monastery. That life feels distant now, belonging almost to someone else. What remains is the long continuity of this place, this rhythm, this shared devotion that has shaped him more deeply than any single choice ever could. The body, however, makes itself known. Joints ache in the cold. Sleep becomes lighter. The long hours of standing during prayer are shortened or adapted. These changes are met without complaint. Discomfort is acknowledged honestly but without resentment. Pain, like silence, becomes another teacher. It teaches patience. It teaches humility. It teaches acceptance of limits that no amount of discipline can override. Illness arrives eventually, as it must. When it does, the response is gentle and steady. A brother brings water. Another adjusts blankets. The infirm monk is never left alone for long, not out of fear, but out of care. There is no sense of urgency to cure at all costs. The goal is comfort, dignity, and presence. Prayers are said quietly nearby, not as desperate pleas, but as familiar companions to whatever unfolds next. As death draws nearer, it is not treated as an interruption. It is understood as part of the same cycle that has governed every day within the monastery. The dying monk is encouraged to rest, to release effort, to trust the rhythm that has carried him for so long. There is no dramatic farewell, no final speeches. Words feel unnecessary now. What matters has already been lived. Other monks come and go quietly, sitting nearby, holding silence together. Hands may be held, eyes may close, breathing slows, and when the final breath comes, it arrives gently without resistance, like the closing of a door that has been opened and closed countless times before. Death does not stop the rhythm. The bell rings. Prayers are spoken. The body is washed with care, dressed in familiar robes and placed simply within the chapel. Candles burn softly. The community gathers, chanting the same psalms that have accompanied countless brothers before. Grief is present, but it is held within structure, supported by ritual given form rather than chaos. No one rushes the mourning, and no one lingers excessively. Life continues not as indifference but as faithfulness. The monk is buried simply, often within the monastery grounds, close to those he lived and prayed beside for decades. There may be no marker or only a modest one. His name is spoken one last time during prayer, and then it gently fades into the larger memory of the community. He is not forgotten, he is absorbed. For the monastery, this cycle repeats again and again. New monks arrive, old monks depart, the building remains, the rhythm remains. Stone walls witness generations of quiet lives lived fully, not through achievement or recognition, but through constancy. From the outside, this life may seem small. From within, it feels vast. What remains after decades in the monastery is not a list of accomplishments, but a way of being, a steadiness, a familiarity with silence, an ability to remain present without needing to be entertained or distracted. The monk does not leave behind books written in his name or monuments bearing his image. He leaves behind something less visible but deeply felt, a contribution to the atmosphere of the place itself. The prayers he spoke linger. The paths he walked remember his footsteps. The silence he kept remains woven into the walls. For those still living within the monastery, the presence of those who came before is never entirely absent. There is a sense, quiet and unspoken, that one is never praying alone, that every chant carries echoes of voices long gone, that every bell rings not only for the living, but for all who have answered its call before. This continuity brings comfort. It softens fear. It makes the end of life feel less like an ending and more like a return. At night, when the monastery rests beneath the stars, there is a feeling of deep enclosure and belonging, not confinement, shelter. The world beyond the walls continues its restless movement, full of change and uncertainty. Inside, the rhythm holds. The bell waits patiently for morning. For a monk nearing the end of his life, there is little desire for reflection on what might have been different. Regret, if it arises, passes quickly. What remains is gratitude. Gratitude for structure when life felt overwhelming. Gratitude for silence when words failed. Gratitude for community when solitude became heavy. Gratitude for a life shaped slowly, carefully, and with intention. And so, when the bell rings again at dawn, somewhere within the monastery, younger monks rise to answer it. They pull on familiar robes. They step onto cold stone floors. They walk the same corridors. They chant the same words. The rhythm continues. In this way, the daily life of a medieval monk does not end with death. It flows onward, carried by those who remain, shaped by those who came before, and sustained by a rhythm that has outlasted generations. Nothing here is hurried. Nothing is wasted. Every moment belongs to the same quiet, enduring pattern. And as you listen, as you rest within this steady unfolding, you too are invited into that rhythm, to breathe more slowly, to release urgency, to rest in the knowledge that a life does not need to be loud or exceptional to be meaningful. Sometimes, it only needs to be steady. Sometimes, it only needs to be lived one quiet moment at a time. Long after individual lives have come and gone within the monastery, long after names have been spoken for the last time and then gently released, something remains that cannot be easily described, yet can be felt the moment one steps inside these walls. It is not the stone itself, though the stone has endured. It is not the rituals alone, though they continue unchanged. It is a presence shaped by countless quiet lives, layered one upon another, forming a depth of stillness that feels almost tangible, as though the air itself has learned how to rest. This is the true legacy of the medieval monastery. The monk who lived here did not seek to leave behind proof of his existence. He did not aim to be remembered. His goal was simpler and far more difficult: to show up, to remain, to return again and again to the same quiet rhythm, regardless of mood, doubt, fatigue, or longing. Over time, this faithfulness shaped not only the monk, but the place itself. Paths worn smooth by generations of feet begin to curve naturally beneath each step, guiding movement without conscious thought. Door handles polished by countless hands reflect candlelight softly, carrying the touch of those long gone. Even the silence has texture here, deepened by repetition, made gentle by familiarity. For those who enter the monastery from the outside world, this quiet can feel almost overwhelming at first. The absence of noise reveals just how much noise one carries within. Thoughts rush forward, memories surface. The mind searches instinctively for distraction, but the monastery does not respond. It does not offer entertainment. It does not rush to fill the space. Instead, it waits. And slowly, if one allows it, something shifts. Breathing slows. The urgency that once felt essential begins to loosen its grip. What remains is not emptiness but spaciousness, a wide, open stillness where nothing needs to be accomplished. The monks understand this transformation intimately because they have lived it themselves. Each one arrived carrying a world inside him. Each one learned, slowly and imperfectly, how to lay that world down piece by piece, not by force, not by denial, but by returning again and again to simple acts, standing for prayer, copying text, tending soil, listening to bells, resting in silence. The power of monastic life lies not in dramatic spiritual experiences, but in the cumulative effect of small, faithful gestures repeated over a lifetime. This is why the monastery endures, not because it resists change aggressively, but because it moves at a pace slow enough to absorb change without losing its center. Wars may pass nearby. Kingdoms may rise and fall. Plagues may sweep through the land. Within these walls, life continues. The bell rings, prayers are spoken, work is done. This steadiness offers something rare in the medieval world, a sense of continuity that does not depend on political power or material wealth. The monks themselves rarely speak of meaning in abstract terms. They do not debate the purpose of life endlessly. Meaning here is lived, not analyzed. It is found in the willingness to rise when the bell rings, even when sleep feels heavy. It is found in patience with others, especially when patience feels difficult. It is found in humility, accepting correction, limitation, and anonymity without resentment. Over time, these qualities shape a person from the inside out, softening sharp edges, quieting restless desires, and creating space for something deeper to emerge. This deeper presence is difficult to name. It is not constant happiness. It is not emotional intensity. It is a groundedness, a sense of being held by something larger than individual effort. For some monks, this presence is felt clearly during prayer. For others, it emerges while working with their hands when movement and breath align naturally. For many, it arrives unexpectedly during a quiet walk in the cloister or in the stillness just before sleep. It cannot be summoned on command. It can only be received. As centuries pass, monasteries become quiet anchors in the landscape, known not only for prayer but for stability, hospitality, and care. Travelers rest here. The poor are fed here. The sick are tended here. The monastery does not isolate itself completely from the world. It engages with the world carefully, intentionally, without being consumed by it. This balance allows monastic life to serve as a quiet counterpoint to the noise and urgency beyond its walls. The monk understands that his life, though hidden, is not insignificant. He knows that his prayers join a long, unbroken chain, that his presence contributes to the atmosphere of peace that others may feel without understanding why, that his quiet endurance shapes the community just as surely as visible labor. This understanding does not inflate the ego. It humbles it, because the monk knows he is one small part of something vast and enduring. At the end of each day, when darkness settles once more and the monastery rests, there is a sense of completion that does not depend on accomplishment. The day may have been ordinary, nothing remarkable may have occurred, and yet the rhythm has been honored. That is enough. The monk does not measure his worth by productivity or recognition. He measures it by presence, by attention, by willingness. For those listening now, resting in this story, there is an invitation here that extends beyond stone walls and ancient routines. It is the invitation to slow down, to notice the way repetition can become grounding rather than dull, to recognize that silence is not absence but space. The monastery teaches that life does not need to be filled with constant novelty to be meaningful. It needs steadiness. It needs care. It needs time. Even in the modern world where bells are replaced by alarms and silence is rare, the wisdom of monastic life remains quietly relevant. The practice of returning again and again to what is simple and essential can still shape a life. Breathing consciously, working attentively, listening deeply, resting without guilt. These are not relics of the past. They are timeless. As the night deepens around the monastery, stars wheel slowly overhead, unseen by most, yet faithfully present. Inside, the monks sleep, their bodies and minds resting within the structure that has held them for so long. The bell waits. Morning will come. And when it does, the rhythm will begin again, just as it always has. This is the quiet power of the medieval monk's life. Not dramatic, not loud, not easily explained, but steady, enduring, and deeply human. Rest here a little longer. Let the stillness linger. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to become. Only this moment held gently. Within the slow, patient rhythm of a life lived quietly and well. As the night deepens around the monastery, there comes a point when even silence seems to soften, as though it too has grown tired and chosen to rest more fully into itself. The world beyond the walls feels impossibly far away now. No carts pass. No voices call out. Even the wind moves carefully, brushing against stone and wood without insistence. Inside, the monastery breathes slowly, held together by familiar sounds. the quiet shifting of bodies in sleep, the faint creak of ancient timbers adjusting to the cold, the steady presence of walls that have witnessed centuries of nights just like this one. Nothing needs to happen. Everything is already where it belongs. For the monks, this deep hour of night is not empty time. It is a continuation of the same gentle rhythm that shapes every part of their lives. Even in sleep, they are held by routine, by trust, by the knowledge that the bell will ring when it is time, and until then, rest is allowed. There is no need to remain alert, no need to prepare. The structure has already done that work. If you were to walk quietly through the corridors now, your footsteps careful not to disturb the stillness, you would notice how simple everything is. Small cells, plain beds, few possessions, nothing excess, nothing missing. Each monk has learned over many years that comfort does not come from abundance but from familiarity, from knowing where one is meant to be, from trusting that the next moment will arrive without force. The simplicity of the monastery does not shrink the inner world, it expands it. When distractions fall away, attention grows stronger, more refined. The monk becomes attuned to subtle shifts, the way breath changes with emotion, the way thoughts rise and fall like tides, the way silence itself has texture and depth. These things cannot be learned quickly. They require time. They require repetition. They require patience with boredom, discomfort, and doubt. And so the monastery offers all three in abundance. Years earlier, when the monk first arrived, he may have believed that this life would give him answers, clear understanding, certainty. But what he discovered instead was something quieter and more enduring. Not answers, but presence. Not certainty, but trust. Not escape from the world, but a deeper way of inhabiting it. The monastery did not remove his humanity. It refined it. At some point, often without noticing exactly when, the monk stops measuring his days. He no longer counts how long he has been here or how much remains ahead. Time becomes circular rather than linear. Morning prayer flows into work. Work flows into rest. Rest flows into sleep. And then the bell rings again. This continuity creates a sense of belonging that does not depend on excitement or novelty. Belonging here is quiet. It is earned through presence. When visitors come to the monastery, they often remark on the calm they feel without understanding why. They speak softly without being asked. They slow their movements instinctively. Something in the atmosphere invites restraint. The monks do not claim credit for this. They know it is not something they have created intentionally. It is something that has emerged over time, shaped by countless acts of attention, humility, and restraint. Peace here is not enforced, it is practiced. In conversation with visitors, when conversation is permitted, monks often speak simply. They do not offer elaborate explanations of spiritual life. They speak of showing up, of listening, of returning to the present moment when the mind wanders. These words may sound ordinary, but behind them lies a lifetime of practice. As dawn slowly approaches again, long before the sky begins to lighten, the monastery stirs almost imperceptibly. A shift in the air, a subtle change in stillness. The bell has not rung yet, but something within the walls already knows that morning is coming. Sleep grows lighter, breathing changes. The rhythm prepares itself to begin again. For the monk, waking is not an interruption. It is a continuation. He rises not because he is eager, nor because he is compelled, but because rising has become part of who he is. The body remembers. The mind follows. Bare feet meet cold stone once more, and instead of resistance there is recognition. Yes, this again. The bell rings, clear, measured, unhurried. And with that sound, the monastery moves as one, not quickly, not dramatically, but with a shared understanding that this moment has arrived exactly as it always does. There is comfort in this reliability. In a world where so much is uncertain, this sound remains. As the monks gather for prayer, voices rise slowly, shaped by sleep, by age, by countless repetitions. No one strives for perfection. The chant is not performance, it is participation. Each voice contributes what it can. Together they form something steady and whole. In these early hours, there is a sense of beginning that does not require ambition. The day does not need to be improved. It does not need to be optimized. It simply needs to be lived. This attitude shapes everything that follows. Work is done carefully, not anxiously. Rest is taken without guilt. Silence is held without fear. For those who live outside such walls, life often feels like a series of demands, things to accomplish, goals to reach, identities to maintain. The monastery offers a different way. Here, life is not something to prove. It is something to inhabit, to move through slowly, attentively, with care. The monk understands, perhaps more deeply than he can articulate, that most of life is not made up of extraordinary moments. It is made up of ordinary ones. The way one breathes, the way one listens, the way one responds to the same tasks, the same people, the same limitations, day after day. And it is precisely here, in this ordinary repetition, that transformation quietly takes place. As the day unfolds once more through prayer, work, silence, and rest, the monk does not seek to escape time. He moves with it. He allows it to shape him. There is no hurry to reach the end. Each step matters. Each moment is enough. And as you listen now, resting in this gentle unfolding, there is no need to imagine yourself within the monastery walls to receive what it offers. The rhythm is not confined to stone buildings or ancient orders. It exists wherever attention is given patiently, where routine is honored, where silence is allowed to speak. You may notice your own breathing slowing, your thoughts drifting more gently, the sense that nothing is being asked of you, that you are allowed for this moment simply to be. This, too, is part of the rhythm. The monastery does not rush you back into the world. It lets you linger. It trusts that when you are ready, movement will return naturally, just as the bell rings when it is time, just as dawn arrives without effort. For now, rest here. Let the quiet continue. The stone walls hold, the rhythm remains, and nothing more is required of you. As the hours pass and the monastery settles once more into its familiar stillness, there is a sense that nothing new needs to be introduced, nothing added, nothing explained. Everything essential has already been placed gently into position. The stone walls stand as they always have. The corridors remain quiet and patient. The air itself seems to move more slowly now, as though it has learned the value of unhurried presence. This is the hour where words soften, where meaning drifts rather than arrives, where effort is finally allowed to dissolve. The medieval monk understands this hour well. It is not marked on any schedule. No bell announces it. It arrives naturally when the day has given all that it can give, and the night asks nothing in return. Here, there is no striving for insight, no attempt to improve or refine the self. There is only rest. Within his cell, the monk lies quietly, his breathing slow and even, rising and falling in harmony with the steady calm that fills the monastery. Thoughts come, but they no longer demand attention. They appear like distant echoes, faint and indistinct, losing their shape almost as soon as they arise. The mind has learned that it does not need to chase every sound. It can remain where it is. The life that has unfolded here, year after year, season after season, does not replay itself in sharp detail. Instead, it settles into the body as a feeling, a sense of steadiness, a familiarity with silence, a trust that nothing essential has been missed. This trust is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It simply exists quietly like the walls that surround the monk as he rests. For a medieval monk, the idea of completion is not tied to finishing tasks or reaching milestones. Completion is found in surrender, in allowing the rhythm to continue without interference, in letting the bell ring when it rings and letting silence return when it does. Nothing is forced. Nothing is withheld. Outside the monastery, the world continues its restless turning. Somewhere, people hurry through streets. Somewhere, voices rise in argument or celebration. Somewhere, decisions are being made, plans are being laid, futures are being chased. But here, inside these walls, the world slows to a pace that feels closer to breathing than to striving. And that difference matters. The monk does not believe that this life is superior to others. He believes only that it is his, chosen once and then chosen again every day through small acts of return. Return to prayer, return to work, return to silence, return to rest. This returning is the heart of the practice. As night deepens, there is a feeling of being held, not tightly, not possessively, but securely, like something resting in a familiar place. The monastery does not demand awareness. It allows drifting, it allows sleep, it allows release. In the long history of this place, countless monks have rested in this same way, in this same hour, with the same quiet trust. They did not know the future. They did not need to. They trusted the rhythm. They trusted the morning would come. And it always did. The bell, resting now in silence, will ring again when the time is right. It does not worry about being forgotten. It knows its purpose. The same can be said for the life lived here. Its value does not depend on attention. It does not fade because it is quiet. It deepens. As you listen, you may notice that the story itself no longer moves forward. It circles, it slows, it rests. This is intentional because the final gift of monastic life is not understanding but permission. Permission to stop searching. Permission to be still. Permission to let the present moment be enough. Breathing becomes easier here, not because anything has changed, but because nothing needs to be carried. The weight of expectation loosens. The need to make sense of everything softens. Silence becomes gentle rather than vast. The monk sleeps now, his body resting fully, his mind no longer holding onto the day. And in his rest, the monastery rests with him. Walls, floors, beams, and stones all seem to settle, as though relieved to pause in their long vigil. Nothing is moving toward an outcome. Everything is simply here. In this stillness, there is no beginning and no end, no urgency, no demand, just the quiet continuation of a rhythm that has always been present. You are not required to follow it. You are invited. If sleep comes now, it comes naturally. If wakefulness remains, it is gentle. There is no wrong way to be in this moment. The monastery does not judge. It does not instruct. It simply holds space. The medieval monk's life teaches this final lesson without words, that a meaningful life does not need to be loud. That presence matters more than progress. That repetition can be a form of care. That silence can be a companion rather than a void. As the night carries on, the stars continue their slow movement overhead, unseen but constant. The earth turns quietly. The monastery remains. And somewhere within its walls, the steady rhythm of breath continues, unbroken. You may let go now. Let thoughts drift. Let awareness soften. Nothing further is expected. Nothing is missing. The bell will ring again, but not yet. For now there is only rest, only stillness, only this gentle, enduring quiet. There comes a point deep into the quiet of the night when even the idea of time begins to dissolve. Moments no longer feel separate from one another. They no longer arrive with edges or definitions. Instead, everything blends gently together, breath flowing into breath, stillness settling into stillness, the present moment stretching softly without resistance. This is a state the medieval monk knows well, not because he seeks it, but because his life has prepared him for it. Within the monastery, nothing stirs with urgency. The stones rest beneath the weight of centuries. The wooden beams hold the memory of countless winters. The floors, worn smooth by slow footsteps, seem almost warm with familiarity. Even the darkness feels settled here, no longer something to be endured, but something that belongs. The monk sleeps, and in his sleep the rhythm continues. Breathing becomes the only movement that matters now. In and out, each breath arrives without effort. No thought needs to guide it. No intention needs to shape it. The body knows what to do. This simple trust, this willingness to allow life to continue without control, is something the monk has practiced for many years, and now it carries him effortlessly into rest. Long ago, before he entered the monastery, nights may have been filled with restlessness, thoughts racing, plans forming, regrets resurfacing. But here, over time, night has become a companion rather than a challenge. Darkness no longer invites worry. It invites release. The monk does not replay his life as he sleeps. There is no need. What has been lived fully, one ordinary day at a time. No single moment demands attention now. The past is not pulling. The future is not calling. There is only the steady presence of rest. Somewhere beyond the monastery walls, the world continues its endless motion. Roads stretch onward. Rivers move steadily toward the sea. Cities glow faintly beneath distant stars. But none of that reaches inside these walls. Here, the pace is slower. Here, life unfolds at the speed of breath. This difference is not separation. It is contrast. The monastery does not reject the world. It simply reminds it that there is another way to move through time, a way that does not exhaust the spirit, a way that allows the mind to settle rather than scatter. The monk learned this not through explanation but through repetition, standing when the bell rang, sitting when the prayer ended, working when it was time to work, resting when rest was given. Each act, simple on its own, became transformative through constancy. And now, even in sleep, the body remembers that steadiness. The silence of the monastery at this hour is not empty. It is layered. It holds the echoes of chanting, faint and distant. It holds the memory of footsteps in the cloister. It holds the presence of those who have rested here before. This silence does not press in. It supports. The monk turns slightly in his sleep. A small movement, nothing more. The body adjusts naturally, seeking comfort without thought. Even this is part of the rhythm. Nothing is forced. Nothing is corrected. If you were to sit quietly now, listening, you might notice how the monastery seems to breathe along with its inhabitants. A subtle expansion, a gentle release. Stone and wood responding to temperature and time. The building itself participates in rest. There is no fear in this stillness, no sense of being left behind. The monk trusts the morning. He does not need to anticipate it. He knows it will come just as it always has. This trust has been built slowly, patiently, over countless dawns. The bell remains silent. Its voice is not needed yet. It waits, suspended between moments, content, and its purpose. When the time arrives, it will sound. Until then, it rests. The monk's dreams, if they come at all, are gentle and indistinct. No sharp images, no urgency. Just impressions, light moving across stone, voices blending into chant, hands working steadily with familiar tools. Dream and memory mingle quietly without demanding meaning. In this deep rest, there is no effort to be holy, disciplined, or attentive. Those qualities belong to waking life. Now there is only surrender. And surrender here is not weakness. It is wisdom. The monastery teaches this lesson subtly, without words. That rest is not something to earn. It is something to receive. That silence does not need to be filled. That being present does not require constant awareness. Sometimes presence is simply allowing oneself to fade gently into sleep. Hours pass unnoticed. The night stretches unmeasured. Somewhere far beyond these walls, the sky begins its slow, invisible shift toward morning. But here there is no anticipation, only rest. The monk's breathing deepens. The body settles further. Muscles soften. The weight of the day dissolves completely. What remains is the simplest expression of life, existing without effort. This is perhaps the quiet gift of the monastic life. Not ecstasy, not certainty, but ease. A deep, embodied ease that allows one to rest fully without fear of what comes next. And as you listen now, there is no expectation that you remain awake. The rhythm does not require attention. It does not test you. It simply continues. You may drift. You may stay. Either is welcome. The monastery holds this moment without judgment. The walls do not demand wakefulness. The silence does not insist on awareness. Everything here understands the value of letting go. Soon, though not yet, the bell will ring again. Morning will arrive. Robes will be gathered. Footsteps will return to the corridors. Voices will rise softly in prayer. But all of that belongs to another moment. Another chapter. For now there is only this: stillness, breath, rest. Let the night continue. Let thoughts loosen their grip. Let awareness soften at the edges. Nothing is required, nothing is missing. The medieval monk sleeps, the monastery rests, and the rhythm, patient, steady, enduring, holds everything gently in place. Somewhere in the deep center of the night, when even dreams have thinned and faded, there is a kind of quiet that feels almost endless. It does not stretch forward. It does not pull backward. It simply exists. This is the quiet the medieval monk rests within now. Not waiting, not expecting, not holding, just resting. The monastery at this hour feels less like a building and more like a presence. The stone walls no longer define boundaries, they simply hold. The corridors are no longer paths to walk, they are stillness itself. Everything that once felt solid begins to soften, as though time itself has loosened its grip. Breath moves gently through the monk's body. In and out, there is no effort behind it, no instruction. Life continues itself effortlessly, quietly, faithfully. This is the same breath that carried him through prayer, through work, through silence, through years, and now it carries him through rest. If a thought arises, it drifts slowly like a cloud passing across a moonlit sky. It does not linger. It does not demand explanation. It dissolves naturally, returning the mind to openness. The monk does not follow thoughts anymore. He has learned that stillness does not require attention. It only requires allowance. Long ago, rest may have felt like something fragile, easily interrupted, easily lost. But here, rest has grown strong. It has been practiced. It has been trusted. It no longer depends on circumstances. Even discomfort, when it appears, is met softly and then released. The body adjusts. The breath continues. The monastery seems to listen, not actively, not intentionally, but with the quiet patience of something that has nothing to prove. It has watched generations lie down and rise again. It knows that rest is not an ending. It is a pause. Somewhere within the walls, a faint sound settles, a beam adjusting, stone cooling, wood responding to night air. These sounds do not break the silence. They belong to it. They remind the monk, even in sleep, that nothing here is separate from the rhythm. Time passes, though no one counts it. The night deepens, then begins its slow, unseen turning toward morning. But the monk does not move toward the future. He remains exactly where he is, held. There is no striving here, no reaching for meaning. Meaning has already been lived quietly through countless ordinary days. Now there is only the simple fact of being, and that is enough. The medieval monk's life has taught him this lesson gently over many years, that nothing essential is lost when one stops trying to grasp it. That peace does not arrive through effort. That rest is not something the mind achieves, but something it allows. In this deep stillness, even identity softens. The monk is no longer defined by age, by role, by memory. He is simply presence resting within presence, a breath within breath, a quiet point within an endless rhythm. The monastery mirrors this. It is no longer a place with history. It is a moment that continues. Stone, silence, darkness, breath, all equal, all steady. If you remain awake now, there is nothing to attend to. If sleep draws you further, there is nothing to resist. The rhythm does not care which path you take. Both belong. Somewhere far away, the first subtle hint of dawn begins to form, not as light but as possibility. A slight shift in temperature, a gentle easing of darkness. But here, within the monastery, nothing changes yet. The night is still complete. The bell remains silent. Its stillness is purposeful. It does not rush the moment. It honors it. The monk turns again, barely noticeable, settling deeper into comfort. The body finds its own balance. Muscles release. The breath grows slower still. There is a sense of sinking, not downward but inward. This inward settling is familiar. It has happened every night, and every night it has been enough. The world beyond the monastery will awaken soon. Voices will rise, movement will return. But that world does not intrude here. It waits its turn. The monk does not prepare for tomorrow. Preparation belongs to waking hours. Now is for restoration. Now is for letting go. Silence deepens again, folding gently around everything. It does not isolate, it unifies. There is no inside or outside, only stillness quietly shared. And as you listen, you may feel that stillness within yourself as well, not something added, something remembered, a natural state beneath thought and effort. There is nothing to learn here, nothing to solve, only the permission to rest fully without explanation. The monastery holds this permission effortlessly. It has offered it for centuries. It will continue to offer it long after this moment has passed. Breath continues. Night continues. Rest continues. The medieval monk sleeps on, undisturbed, supported by walls, silence, and rhythm, and everything is exactly as it should be. There is a depth to the night that only reveals itself when nothing is being asked of it. No movement, no anticipation, no effort to shape the moment into something meaningful. The night simply is, and within that quiet existence, the monastery rests as it has rested for centuries, untroubled, patient, and complete. The medieval monk sleeps within this depth, his body supported by familiar stillness, his breath moving gently in a rhythm so natural it no longer feels like something he is doing. It feels like something that is happening. Life continues itself. In this state, the edges of awareness soften. There is no clear line between sleeping and waking, between thought and silence. Everything blends together in a calm, continuous flow. The monk does not resist this. He has learned that resistance is unnecessary here. Long ago, the discipline of monastic life shaped his days, bells, prayers, work, rest. Now those structures have shaped his nights as well. They have taught his body how to release, how to trust, how to let go completely without fear of being lost. The monastery holds him, not tightly, not possessively, but with the quiet assurance of something that has done this many times before. Walls do not judge. Stone does not hurry. Darkness does not demand. Everything allows. Breath slows further. In and out each breath is a gentle wave arriving and receding without effort. There is no awareness of time passing. Minutes dissolve. Hours soften. The night expands into something spacious and unmeasured. If a thought stirs, it does not take shape. It remains half-formed, like a memory fading before it can be recalled. There is no pull to follow it. Silence receives it and lets it pass. The monk's body adjusts slightly. A shoulder relaxes, a hand loosens its gentle curl. These movements happen without intention. The body knows how to care for itself when given permission. Outside the monastery, the land rests as well. Fields lie quiet, paths wait. Even animals move less now, conserving energy in the deep hours before dawn. Everything seems to agree that this time belongs to rest. Within the monastery, the stillness feels layered, as though it has weight and texture. Not heavy, comforting. Like a thick blanket laid gently over everything. This is not emptiness. It is fullness without noise, a presence that does not announce itself. The monk's life has prepared him for this state not through explanation but through consistency. Day after day he learned to arrive where he was, to accept what each moment offered, to release what did not need to be carried. And now, in sleep, those lessons unfold naturally. There is no striving to be peaceful. Peace has already arrived. It arrived quietly, without permission, and stayed. The monastery itself seems to rest deeper now. Even the faint sounds of night, wood settling, stone cooling, grow rarer. Silence deepens further, becoming almost complete. There is no fear in this completeness. No sense of disappearing, only the calm reassurance of being held within something stable and enduring. The monk does not dream of the future. He does not revisit the past. His sleep is simple, undisturbed, restorative. Somewhere far beyond these walls, time continues its slow turning. But here, time feels irrelevant. The night is whole in itself. The bell waits. It does not anticipate its own ringing. It rests in stillness content. This rest is not passive. It is alive. It is active in its own quiet way, restoring, balancing, preparing without effort. The monk's breathing deepens once more. The space between breaths widens. Everything slows. In this slowing, there is a sense of safety. Nothing unexpected will happen here. Nothing sudden will break the stillness. The monastery has held countless nights like this. It knows how to keep them. If awareness flickers briefly, it fades again just as gently. There is no instruction to remain awake, No pressure to observe. Sleep is welcome. Sleep is allowed. This is the final gift of the monastic rhythm, the ability to rest completely without anxiety or anticipation. To trust that when the time comes, waking will arrive naturally. And until then, nothing is required. The monk remains still. The monastery remains quiet. The night continues. You may rest here as well. There is no need to follow the words. They are only a gentle guide, already slowing, already fading. Breath continues. Silence holds. Everything remains exactly as it should be. The medieval monk sleeps on, supported by rhythm, stone, and centuries of quiet devotion. And the night, deep and unbroken, carries him gently forward. And now, as the long night reaches its deepest calm, there is nothing left to explain, nothing left to unfold. Everything that needed to be said has already settled gently into place. The monastery rests. The monk rests. The rhythm continues quietly, faithfully, without effort. Somewhere, far beyond these walls, the world is beginning to stir again. Not yet with sound, not yet with movement, only with the faintest suggestion that morning will come when it is ready. But here, inside the monastery, there is no rush to meet it. The night is still whole. The medieval monk remains asleep, his breathing slow and even, each breath rising and falling like a tide that has learned exactly how far it needs to go. There is no tension left in the body, no holding, no striving, only rest. The stone walls hold their familiar coolness. The wooden beams remain steady overhead. The floors, worn smooth by centuries of quiet footsteps, rest beneath the weight of nothing at all. Everything has settled into balance. This life, so simple, so repetitive, so quiet, has done its work, not by changing the world, but by shaping a way of being within it. A way that values presence over urgency, steadiness over intensity, silence over noise. The monk did not seek to escape life. He learned how to enter it fully, one prayer, one task, one breath at a time. And now in rest there is nothing more to enter, nothing more to do. Time feels distant here, not gone, just softened. Hours pass unnoticed. Moments stretch gently without edges. The night does not ask to be used. It asks only to be received. If you were to remain here listening closely, you might notice that even silence has layers. A deep stillness beneath a softer stillness. A quiet beneath the quiet. And within that depth, a sense of safety that does not depend on understanding. The monk's life has shown that meaning does not need to be dramatic to be real. It does not need to be visible to be lasting. It can be built slowly, patiently, through the same actions repeated with care. Standing, sitting, working, resting, returning. And now, at the very end of this long unfolding, there is only the gentle release. The release of attention, the release of effort, the release of thought. You do not need to imagine anything more. You do not need to follow the story any further. The monastery will continue without you. The bell will ring when it is time. The monks will rise. The rhythm will go on. For now, this moment is complete. The silence holds. The breath continues. Everything is enough. If sleep has already come, then these words will fade naturally into the quiet. If wakefulness remains, it can rest here without purpose. There is no wrong way to be in this final moment. The medieval monk sleeps on, unaware of endings or beginnings, carried gently by a life lived slowly and with intention. And the monastery, unchanged and enduring, keeps its watch, not over time, but over stillness. As this journey comes to a close, take a moment when you are ready to gently return. Carry with you whatever calm you found here. Carry the rhythm. Carry the slowness. Carry the permission to rest. And if this quiet story brought you comfort, if it helped you slow down, if it gave you a peaceful place to rest your mind, please consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment to share how this journey felt for you or what quiet history you'd like to explore next. Your presence here helps keep these calm stories alive. For now, rest well and thank you for listening.